Hello, everyone. My name is Madison. I am 25 years old, and I need to get this entire situation off my chest because it has been eating away at me for weeks now. This whole mess began when my stepfather, Mark, called me out of the blue and told me in this cold, commanding tone, "Find a room. My children need it. They do not have money." It was not a request, it was an order, and I remember standing there with my phone in my hand feeling completely stunned. I had to take a moment just to process that he had the audacity to speak to me like I was some kind of backup plan he could order around. To understand how much this rattled me, I have to explain some background. My mom, Linda, married Mark when I was 10 years old. My parents' divorce was messy, and when Mark came into the picture, I was already a pretty quiet kid, the kind who kept to herself and tried to stay out of trouble. I was always polite, I got good grades, and I think the only reason Mark tolerated me was because I was low maintenance. He never really tried to bond with me. He had two kids from his previous marriage, Tyler, who is now 22, and Emily, who is now 20. From the beginning, it was clear who his priority was. Tyler and Emily were always treated like royalty. They got brand new clothes every season, the latest phones, and they went on vacations with Mark while I usually stayed behind or tagged along feeling like an outsider. I grew up knowing that if I wanted something, I had to work for it myself. By the time I was 15, I was working part-time after school to save for things like my own prom dress, because I knew asking my mom or Mark would get me nowhere. My mom was doing her best financially, but Mark held the purse strings tightly when it came to me. He was generous with Tyler and Emily, but whenever I needed anything, I was told to figure it out myself. I even helped pay for household bills once I started earning more, while Tyler and Emily never lifted a finger. They were raised to believe that their dad would always rescue them. When I turned 18, I moved out to attend college in another state. I worked 2 jobs while going to school full-time. It was exhausting, and I ended up with student loans, but I was determined to build a better life for myself. I scraped by, and I never asked Mark or even my mom for financial help because I had learned early on that I could not rely on him. There was even a time when I was desperate and needed $500 to repair my car so I could keep getting to work, and I swallowed my pride and called Mark, only to be told that I should figure it out because that's what adults do. I remember crying in my tiny apartment that night, but I still managed to make it work. I sold some of my belongings and picked up extra shifts, and I made it through. Fast forward to now. I have been out of college for a few years, and I finally landed a stable job in marketing. I worked hard, saved every penny, and last year I bought myself a 2-bedroom condo. It is not huge or fancy, but it is mine. I paid for all of the furniture in cash because I have learned to avoid debt like the plague. The second bedroom is my office because I sometimes work from home, and I also use it as a guest room for my mom whenever she comes to visit. This condo represents years of sacrifice and independence for me. Then a few weeks ago, I got that call from Mark. He told me his kids were being evicted from their apartment and had nowhere to go. His tone was flat and commanding, as if I had no choice but to obey him. He said, "You have a 2-bedroom place. Find a room. My children need it." At first, I thought he was joking, so I laughed and asked if he was serious. That was when he told me that Tyler and Emily were already planning to bring their stuff over. I snapped. I told him, "Pack your children yourself. I am not your safety net," and I hung up the phone. Here is the thing about Tyler and Emily. They had every opportunity growing up. Mark spoiled them, paid for their college, and they still managed to squander it. Tyler decided college wasn't for him after a year, and Emily dropped out after failing several classes. Neither of them works full-time. They have bounced between minimum wage jobs, constantly partying and living beyond their means. Their rent was not even that high. Their apartment cost less than my monthly car payment, and yet they could not manage it. This time, Mark claimed he would not dip into his savings to bail them out because he is close to retirement. The audacity of him demanding that I let his kids move into my condo made my blood boil. He never helped me financially ever. He refused me when I desperately needed money to fix my car years ago, but now I am expected to open my home to 2 freeloaders who are adults and perfectly capable of working. Absolutely not. A few days after that phone call, Emily started blowing up my phone with tearful messages about how they had nowhere to go. Tyler texted me asking if he could at least crash on my couch for a bit. I told them both no. Emily then started posting these passive-aggressive statuses on Facebook about how family should help family, clearly aimed at me. My mom called me crying because she felt caught in the middle. She told me that Mark was furious with me and called me heartless. I reminded her that his kids are adults and that I worked hard for everything I have. My mom did not say much after that, but I could hear how tired and stressed she was. Things escalated when Mark showed up at my condo a week later. I was not home at the time, but my neighbor texted me that a man was parked in my spot and sitting in his truck for nearly an hour. She said he looked angry. I drove home later that night, and even though he was gone, my stomach sank. The thought of him showing up uninvited to pressure me made me feel sick. I locked my doors that night and felt sick knowing he was trying to pressure me. I did not expect this entire situation to blow up the way it has. When I first shared what happened, I thought I was just venting about my family drama, but the amount of attention it has gotten and the advice I have received has been overwhelming. I really appreciate the people who reminded me that it is not my responsibility to solve problems for adults who refuse to help themselves. A lot of you asked for more context, so here is everything I know and everything that has happened since. Mark is 56 years old, and he has always made good money. He works in construction management and has been with the same company for decades. He also has a retirement account, savings, and plenty of resources to help his kids if he really wanted to. My mom works part-time in a small boutique, and while she does not make a lot, they live comfortably. Growing up, they always had enough to take family vacations every summer, usually beach trips or theme park vacations. I remember packing my 1 or 2 new outfits for the trip while Emily would have an entire new wardrobe, complete with shoes and accessories. I never expected to be spoiled, but I felt the difference every single time. Once I turned 16, it was expected that I cover my own expenses for everything: clothes, outings with friends, extracurriculars, and eventually even my phone bill. At the time, I told myself it was fine because it taught me responsibility, and in some ways, it really did. I learned to work hard and be independent. But it still stings now, looking back, because Emily and Tyler were never held to those same standards. Emily had a car bought for her when she turned 16, and Tyler had one a few years earlier. Mine was a beat-up old car that I bought with my own money after working weekends at a diner. Emily got her prom dress paid for by Mark, while I worked extra shifts to buy my own. The message was clear. I had to fend for myself, while his kids were handed everything. My mom tried her best to make it fair, but Mark was the one with the bigger paycheck, and his word was final on financial decisions. I grew up feeling like a guest in my own home. After the confrontation on the phone and Mark's attempt to show up at my condo, I decided to block Tyler and Emily temporarily. They had been sending me voice messages filled with whining and insults, calling me selfish and ungrateful. Emily, in particular, left several messages crying about how I should be helping her because family is supposed to stick together. Tyler's messages were shorter but angrier, telling me I was acting like a rich snob because I own my own condo. I finally reached a point where I could not take it anymore and just blocked their numbers. I needed peace. 2 days after I blocked them, Mark sent me a text. It was short and cold. He said, "You'll regret this when no one helps you one day." That text set me off in a way I cannot fully describe. It was so manipulative, so bitter, and so hypocritical that I saw red. I wrote back a long message, pouring years of pent-up frustration into it. I told him that he had every chance to raise responsible adults, but instead, he enabled laziness and entitlement. I told him I was not their parent, I was not their ATM, and I was tired of being treated like I owed them something. I hit send and felt a wave of relief wash over me. He has not responded since. My mom came to visit me this weekend. She looked exhausted when she arrived, and I could tell this entire situation was taking a toll on her. She apologized for Mark's behavior almost immediately, her voice quiet and full of shame. She admitted she felt embarrassed by the way Emily and Tyler had turned out. We sat at my kitchen table drinking coffee, and she started opening up about things I never knew. She told me she wished she had pushed Emily and Tyler harder, that she had been too afraid to challenge Mark's parenting style when we were all younger. She said she knew Mark spoiled his kids to overcompensate for the divorce, but she never realized how much damage it was causing. Then she shared details that made me even more certain that I had made the right choice in setting boundaries. Apparently, Emily had spent $800 on a tattoo sleeve just 2 months ago, while she was already months behind on rent. Tyler had spent nearly $1,000 on a new gaming setup last year instead of putting that money toward savings. My mom told me this with a mix of sadness and disbelief, like she could not understand how they could make such irresponsible choices and then expect me to fix their mess. She said she felt terrible that they were turning their anger on me, especially because I had always been the one who worked hard without asking for handouts. She kept apologizing, saying she wished she had done things differently. Hearing her say that broke my heart because none of this is her fault. She has always been stuck in the middle, trying to keep the peace, and she does not deserve to feel like she failed as a parent. By the end of the weekend, she looked more at ease, like she finally believed me when I said I was not going to cave. She told me she supported me and that I should not feel guilty for protecting my space and my boundaries. She said Mark was furious with me, but that she had no intention of trying to convince me to let Emily and Tyler move in. She hugged me tightly before she left, and I could feel how much she needed reassurance too. I walked her to her car and promised her that I was fine, that I would not let this situation make me feel guilty or responsible for people who refuse to grow up. I reminded her that I worked hard for everything I have, and I will not let anyone guilt me into giving it away. She nodded, and I could see the relief on her face. My mom begged me not to cave, and I reassured her I wouldn't. This situation has reached a level I never thought it would, and I am honestly still processing everything that happened yesterday. I thought blocking Tyler and Emily and standing firm with Mark would make them realize that I was serious, but instead, they escalated in the most ridiculous way possible. Yesterday afternoon, I was at home working in my office when I heard my doorbell ring. At first, I thought it was a package delivery because I wasn't expecting anyone. But then it rang again and again and again. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole, and there they were, Tyler and Emily, standing on my doorstep with garbage bags full of clothes and random belongings. Emily was clutching a pillow under her arm, and Tyler had his phone in his hand, already recording himself like he was about to make a scene for social media. They started pounding on the door and yelling through it, saying that Mark told them I would calm down eventually and let them in. Emily was crying dramatically, saying they had nowhere else to go, while Tyler's voice was angrier, accusing me of abandoning my family and acting heartless. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stood frozen for a moment, feeling a mix of fear and disbelief that they actually showed up here like this, uninvited, assuming I would just cave and let them take over my home. I grabbed my phone and started recording everything. I knew I needed evidence in case things got worse. I didn't respond to them through the door, but after about 5 minutes of relentless pounding and yelling, I finally told them loudly that I would call the police if they didn't leave. Emily screamed something about me being cruel and heartless, while Tyler muttered something under his breath, and then they stomped away. I thought that was the end of it, but when I checked outside about 15 minutes later, I found a handwritten note on my doormat. In large, messy letters, it said, "You're dead to us." I stood there staring at the note for a long time, my stomach twisting in knots. I felt this mixture of anger and fear wash over me, anger that they felt so entitled to my home that they thought threatening me was the way to get what they wanted, and fear because this had crossed a line. They were not just whining or trying to guilt me anymore, they were actively harassing me. I picked up the note carefully and put it in a plastic bag to keep as evidence. Then I sat down and filed a police report online, describing everything that had happened and attaching the recordings and photos I took of them at my door. A few hours later, I got a call from a local officer who confirmed that I did the right thing. He said they couldn't do much unless they came back or things escalated further, but having the report on file was smart. He also said if they showed up again, I should call 911 immediately. I felt a little better after speaking to him, but I still felt shaken. That night, I emailed my condo building's HOA and explained the situation. They responded this morning, letting me know that they had reviewed the security footage from the cameras in the building and confirmed that Emily and Tyler were loitering outside my door for over 30 minutes. They assured me that what they did violated community rules and that they would be monitoring the situation closely. They even offered to send a letter to Mark, warning him that if his kids kept showing up and causing a disturbance, legal action could be taken against them for harassment. Knowing the HOA was on my side gave me a small sense of relief. Even with that reassurance, I couldn't shake the image of them standing outside my door, yelling and demanding entry into my home like they had every right to be there. It is terrifying how entitled they are. I have worked for years to have a safe, quiet space of my own, and now I feel like that safety has been threatened by my own family. I have double-checked my locks and even ordered a small security camera for inside my condo, just for extra peace of mind. As if all of this was not enough, Tyler decided to take the drama to social media. This morning, I woke up to messages from mutual friends sending me screenshots of his latest Instagram post. It was a moody picture of him sitting in his car, and the caption read, "People who grew up privileged don't understand struggling." I actually laughed out loud when I saw it, not because it was funny, but because of how utterly delusional it was. Tyler and Emily were literally handed everything their entire lives. They had cars gifted to them on their 16th birthdays. They had their rent paid for years, their vacations covered, their tuition paid until they dropped out, and their expenses handled by their father every time they messed up. Meanwhile, I was working 2 jobs in college just to keep the lights on, taking out student loans I'm still paying off, and scraping by while they partied. The irony of him trying to paint himself as a victim and me as some kind of spoiled princess was almost comical. I nearly laughed because I literally grew up working 2 jobs while they got cars for their birthdays. The aftermath of this entire situation feels strange, almost surreal, like I am walking around in a life that finally belongs to me but is still shadowed by all of the chaos that has unfolded. After weeks of tension, threats, and drama, I finally received a long text message from Mark this morning. I had been expecting another angry outburst or some passive-aggressive attempt to guilt me, but instead, it was an apology, or at least his version of one. He wrote that he was sorry for how things turned out, which felt like a vague attempt at accountability without actually admitting any wrongdoing. He told me that Emily and Tyler had burned through the last of his savings and that he could not keep helping them anymore. He said Emily had moved in with a friend and that Tyler had gone back to live with their mom, Mark's ex-wife, because Mark refused to keep bailing them out. Reading his words, I felt a mix of emotions, relief that they were no longer trying to force themselves into my life, a strange sadness that our family dynamic had deteriorated so much, and a sharp wave of vindication that everything I had said about their irresponsibility was finally being proven true. For so long, I had been treated like I was cold-hearted or selfish for setting boundaries, yet now even Mark was admitting defeat, acknowledging that his children's entitlement and reckless spending had drained him dry. It felt like validation I should have been happy to receive, but instead, it just left me feeling exhausted. I do not think he fully understands the damage he caused by enabling them for years, and I am not sure he ever will. That text felt less like a genuine apology and more like a man who had finally hit a wall and had no choice but to face reality. While Mark is now dealing with the mess he created, my mom has been staying with me for the past few nights. She needed space from him, and I was more than happy to offer her a safe place to breathe. The first night she arrived, she looked worn out in a way I have never seen before. She sat quietly at my kitchen counter while I made tea, and when she finally started talking, it was like a dam had broken. She told me she was furious with Mark for how he handled everything, not just this recent drama, but all of it, years of favoritism, the way he treated me like an outsider, and his refusal to hold Emily and Tyler accountable for their actions. She said this situation opened her eyes to just how toxic Mark has become, and for the first time, she admitted she was considering separating from him. Hearing her say that broke my heart, because I know she married him hoping for stability and a happy family life after her divorce. She worked so hard to keep our family together, but she was constantly overruled by him, constantly forced to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for me. I told her that I didn't want to be in the middle of their problems anymore, that I wanted peace and distance from all this drama. She nodded and said she understood completely. I could see how conflicted she was, though. She has spent more than a decade building a life with this man, and now she is seriously questioning if staying with him is worth it. I felt bad for her because none of this is her fault. She is a good person who has been trapped in a cycle of Mark's control and his kids' entitlement for too long. At the same time, I felt something else too: freedom. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had truly broken out of this pattern where I was always the responsible one, the one expected to clean up everyone else's messes, to sacrifice my time, energy, and resources for a family that never gave me the same in return. Having my mom here has been bittersweet. We have been spending our evenings just sitting together in my living room, watching movies and drinking tea like we are roommates instead of mother and daughter. She has apologized more times than I can count, and I have reassured her that I do not blame her for how things turned out. If anything, I feel closer to her now because she has finally seen what I have been feeling for years. She told me she was proud of me for standing my ground and that she wishes she had been as strong when she was my age. Hearing her say that made me tear up because I have always wanted her support, and now I finally feel like I have it. The tension in the family has shifted dramatically since Tyler and Emily were turned away at my door. They have both unfriended and blocked me on every platform. Emily has not posted anything about me since that note she left on my doormat, and Tyler seems to be sulking in his own world of self-pity online. The silence from them is almost eerie, but it is also a relief. For weeks, I felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder, worried they would show up again or try something else to guilt me into letting them in. Now, my home finally feels like mine again. I can walk around without feeling anxious every time I hear a knock or the sound of footsteps in the hallway. There is a strange calm that has settled over everything now. Mark has not contacted me since that long apology text, and honestly, I do not care if I ever hear from him again. The relationship we had was never close, and after this, I have no desire to try to rebuild anything. If my mom decides to leave him, I will support her completely, but I also know she needs to come to that decision on her own terms. For now, I am just focusing on my life, my home, and my own happiness. Looking back at the past few weeks, I realize how much emotional weight I have been carrying for years. I was always the one expected to step up, to sacrifice, to take care of myself and everyone else without complaint. This experience has been a harsh reminder that setting boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. I feel a sense of pride that I stood firm, even when the pressure was intense and my own family tried to paint me as heartless. I have spent so much of my life putting other people first, and now I finally feel like I have chosen myself. My home is peaceful again. The guest room is back to being an office and a place for my mom to stay when she needs a break, not a dumping ground for people who refuse to take responsibility for their lives. For the first time in a long time, I feel safe. The locks on my door, the walls I paid for with my own hard work, and the quiet I earned by not caving to guilt trips all feel like proof that I am in control of my own life now. Tyler and Emily can paint me as a villain all they want, but the reality is that they are adults who made their choices, and those choices caught up to them. I am not losing sleep over their opinions anymore. I am not chasing after their approval or trying to make a broken family dynamic work. If they want to cut me off, so be it. In fact, I think it is the healthiest thing that could have happened. I have no room in my life for people who view me as nothing more than a safety net or a bank account. I am sure there will still be fallout from all of this, especially if my mom does choose to separate from Mark, but for now, I feel a sense of peace I have not felt in years. I worked hard for my independence, and I am finally enjoying it without the weight of their entitlement looming over me. My home feels like mine again. Thanks so much for sticking with me and listening all the way to the end of this story. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like and subscribed to the channel. It helps so much and keeps stories like this coming.